was released last year about the payment, the gap, the wage gap between the countries. Every country will do such a, such a statistic itself. It will turn out that it's incredible difference, because women, live longer than men, and they're about to go to retirement earlier. They get part-time jobs. They go to, and so on and so on. But in the same time, I wanted to ask you something about the last part. What you have been said. If this is the case, and it is a direct critique to the representation system, democratic representation system. Actually, where are the possibilities to interfere with this, transnational system, very oppressive system? Actually, we are so, empowered by the system, by the structure itself, and I think we are reduced to our just, bodily, existence, and have no social or political existence anymore.
Yeah. Okay. The first part. Yeah. It's interesting if you look at the really different patterns of rates of childbirth in parts of Europe and the rest of the world. So, you're right. What's your point that, although France has famously got this great sort of maternity package or whatever, but actually this masks longer inequality in terms of wage income. Yeah. No, I think that's right. We've got this image. France, for some reason, I think France now has the highest rate of childbirth in Europe, something like this.
That's one of the reasons.
Yeah.
Strategy of
yes. So you mean it's a kind of cynical in sense, but it masks the deeper long-term inequality or something. Yeah.
If you are taking account during a lifetime, you will see this big gap, and I think they have done this in France, but if they will do it in the UK or, I don't know, in Eastern countries or wherever, it will turn out that it's even bigger than 45%.
Yeah, certainly. It's interesting that,
can you address such a discrimination?
Yeah, suppose in the question of childcare, and obviously, there are many contradictions about the way in which capitalism deals with reproduction, like actual reproduction, right? Because it sort of, obviously in the long term it needs a workforce, right? Literally, simply. But in the short term, of course, it's not prepared to pay for it, right? So, so the state is supposed to be the one that does this, and if the state says, no, we don't want anything to do with this, then childcare it simply becomes privatised as a decision, which is why things like childcare is so expensive. Because it's seen as like a private decision, right? Which has benefits, I suppose, but not economically at all. And it's again a highly isolating thing. The amount of work generated by having a child, it seems immense, right? And if some of that work was shared in that more collective way, it would take less time. There's a way in which the kind of dual demands, let's say, of being a mother and being a worker. So the government, the British government, constantly saying, right, okay, you have a kid, but go back to work, go back to work, go back to work, go back to work. It's in a way, it's absolutely impossible. And in the 80s, you have this rhetoric of having it all as a kind of boosterish, upbuilding discourse, which is supposed to be feminist, right? It's the idea that there are these women that are so amazing, they're like CEOs and they have 5 children and why are we all like this? And they have so much energy, but this masks the reality of actually, having to work and look after children, which is very difficult. It's very interesting in relation to France that in Italy, as the lowest birth rate, but it also has incredibly high female unemployment. It's something like 60%, especially young women, right? But they're not having children either. So basically, you have this situation where there's a kind of implicit refusal, to have children. Whether this is, a real refusal or not. But it's a very different pattern, right? So why is this rate so low there? Is it in relation to not being able to get work and to be paid so badly, so very badly? The widening gap in Italy between male and female pay, at the same time as this kind of utterly sexualized culture is extreme. I mean, lots of people have talked about this in recent years. So like the gains of Italian feminism in the 70s, which were great, just totally destroyed this basically under Berlusconi, culturally, politically, economically, and so on. But there's a huge attack on this now, obviously, like feminist groups in Italy no longer, not that they ever were, but big resurgence of feminism in Italy, precisely around these issues. Your second point about what are the possibilities of interfering or being you mean sort of opposing like this image, that was mentioned at the end. Yeah, I think it's very difficult. I mean, I totally agree with your point about we've seen that all we have is our bodily existence, right? That that it seems very hard to find enough resources to mount a suitably strong counter response or collective thing. And in a way, I think that bodily existence might have to be what we draw upon, in a sense. So when I'm talking about the way in which effective and emotional labour works, or the way in which, there's a kind of combination of body, physical, mental, emotional work that goes into any job, right? But how can you draw upon these things without just being exhausted, right? What is the political resource left in that bodily existence? If that's right, if that's what we somehow are reduced to by forms of exploitative work. There's got to be something there. I mean, people have, particularly Italian theorists have been trying to talk about, what is this capacity? So let's say the capacity to form emotional social bonds, right, which happens even if you are being exploited at work. Okay, you form social bonds with your colleagues, with the people if you have clients or whatever. It's not, you can't regulate human relations totally. You can't completely evacuate social relations. Okay, you can, we can talk about alienation in the old-fashioned way, which is still relevant, if you want, but, you can't eradicate all of those relations. People will have forms of solidarity with one another, whether it's more technical, official forms like unionization or otherwise. And in a way, it's got to be those kinds of things that are the resources. So it's, I dislike images of social transformation that portray or describe a radical break as if everything's going to be completely new. The revolution will destroy the old and there just being newness and we don't know what it looks like, I think this is absolutely wrong. I mean, you have to look to, the real resources that exist, even under forms of oppression and capitalism. You have to say, no, look, here are the ways in which people are nice to each other despite the fact that we're all supposed to be competitive and egotistical and, sort of fighting with one another, right? In a sense, maybe in a very problematic way, this is a question of human nature. I mean, one of the things we're not supposed to talk about anymore is human nature. That this is a terrible discourse that the humanities destroyed, and now we don't ever talk about human nature. But I think in a way you have to talk about, well, what is it that capitalism is exploiting? It is your capacity to communicate, it's your capacity to be nice, be friendly sometimes, depending on your job. It's your capacity in a way to use your shared resources, whether it's language, that sort of links you to other people, right? It's just that labour or that capacity or that emotion is exploited and it's alienated from you. So, but if that's the case, if that's all there is, then it has to come from there. We have to say, no, we have to start, look, this is what does link us, this is what links us, right? And in a way I think Hart and Negri do try and do this. They say, look, forms of labour are actually more similar than we think in a way, right? That we're not so distant, we're not, despite sort of division of labour, that actually there's a kind of tendency towards certain forms of exploitation, certain forms of labour, which sort of unite us negatively. And what we need to do is positively assume those capacities and the very things that are being exploited in the name of a new collective subject, something like this, right? Which is a global project. And I think, as I say, but the real difficulty is all of these terms: trans-border, transnational, global, public, international, are terms that capitalism gets to first. When Marx talks in the Communist Manifesto about capitalism spreading all over the globe, that's what it does. It goes everywhere, and it does it very fast. There's basically nothing there for it, right? There are no sort of, undisclosed corners of the world to colonize. It's basically all being there, or very, almost complete, right? And think about it in terms of natural resources as well. I mean, basically we know how little there is left, right? So if that's the case, and in a way Marx said, look, this is capitalism's genius, the fact that it can, be this global monster that destroys traditions, family, old ways of life, right? That's part of what it does in practice. But it does at the same time, of course, generate a whole new category, which is the proletariat. We could say, do we need this word? Can we talk about something else? But it is also a global subject. So there's two forms of internationalism, or whatever you want to call it. Transnationalism, which is everyone who works, and capitalism itself. And the very pessimistic idea would be to say, no, the only subject of history is capital, right? That labour is a dead category, right? Which some people have argued, like Moshe Postoni and so on. That in fact, there's no form of resistance left in labour. But I don't agree with this at all. I think, and if there is going to be a positive project, you have to look to where it is that people feel most tired in a way, what is that's most taken from us, and take it back somehow. But this is very difficult, I guess.
Most of the recent protests have been unemployed.
Yeah.
Jobs actually in Suez in Spain, there's massive unemployment, and in the Middle East, so the unemployment, so it's not the same thing being exploited. That the point of departure is exploitation and using as labour.
Yeah, that's true, but I wonder if, in a way, you can't not have a relation to the labour market, I suppose, is the point. So even if you're unemployed, you're still a potential worker. Capitalism needs a reserve army of labour, right? It can't have full employment, right? Because otherwise, there won't be any competition for wages, and people, you have to keep wages down by having a reserve army of labour. And I think that capitalism is confronting a problem, which is that it has a surplus of, highly employable, well-educated young people, and youth protests, and not just in Europe, but in Middle East. A lot of it is, of course, about young people saying, well, there's nothing for us left. There's no jobs, there's no future. We've got, we're smart, we're but there's nothing there, right? And we're angry, understandably, rightly angry, so I think. I don't know, I'm worried making too much of a separation between the unemployed and the employed in this sense. Because also precarity in employment is a central feature of how people relate in an anxious way to their work. Right? And again, this is very useful, of course, if people are terrified of losing their jobs, right, they're far less likely to unionise, to fight against bosses, right? So in a way that fine line between employment and unemployment is an integral part of what needs to be employed anyway. Right, because you've got no guarantee, and so, and again, just returning to this idea of capacity. A lot of the anger that the young unemployed people are feeling is a waste of their capacity, right? And I think a waste of capacity and an exploitation of capacity is linked, right? It's like saying, we want to work. But work itself is a form of exploitation that we don't want. We don't want this kind of work.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to say something first about feminism and then go back to the concept of work itself. But since you mentioned Spain, I kind of have to say something about it. I don't understand precisely right now the rhetorics in Spain as well as in other places. You make total sense of what's going on out there very briefly, but one of the problems I see is they say social movements, like new progressive leftish or whatever people who organize protests and claim to organize the revolution as they do in Spain, they say